and gentlemen, I'm here with Lauren Cooney and Kyla McMullen, Dr. Kyla McMullen. I know you don't like me saying that, but I'm going to say it because it sounds fancier coming out of my mouth than anything else I've done today. So there you go. And it's a pleasure to meet you both. Lauren, you are directly responsible for this meeting happening, mostly because you bird dogged both of us through email to get to us this point. So
I just nudge.
Nudge, insisting, nudge, whatever, however you choose to look at it. It was a
Potato,
very
potato.
wonderful thing that you did, because here we are and we're going to be recording this thing together. So by virtue of introduction, let's go through. Kyla, I'll start with you. Give us a little bit of kind of who you are and what you've done.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Cool. So I was born on a Thursday at 9:30 a.m. in Washington, D.C. at Washington Adventist Hospital. And I'm joking. No, that's all real. But um, from growing up, really loved computers, toys, anything electronic. Got my BS in computer science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And that's where I realized I really like research and computers. And I went to the University of Michigan to get my master's and my PhD there to further study these things. And that's when I was met with the trials of the PhD. Very humbling experience. Right now, I'm currently the only woman of color to get a PhD in the computer science department
Wow.
at the University of Michigan. Yeah, I say that not to brag, but to, just give an illustration of how critical it is to get representation there. So after my time at Michigan, I then went to Clemson University for about a year and a half and did research there as an assistant professor, and then interviewed to go to the University of Florida, where I could join the Human-Centered Computing division of the computer science department, because I just love the intersection of people and computer science. All of my degrees from BS to PhD are computer science, but I want to know at the end of the day, how does what I'm making influence or affect the lives of other people? So I've been at Florida for about 6 years now, and I have a research lab. We do really cool stuff with virtual reality and augmented reality, using sound and making very immersive environments where you can hear things like they're coming from actual places around you, but they're coming from headphones. It's really trippy, and we put it into like different kinds of applications. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
That's amazing, and I'll circle back to that because I want to talk a little bit more about that lab, because my tech brain is going off in all kinds of
I
corners.
think that we need to go on a field trip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when everything opens back up,
I
and
know.
DeSantis is no longer the governor of Florida. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
okay. I'm sorry that I don't do politics in general, but that guy needs to go. Now that we've done that, astute
As we all
observation.
nod. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Lauren, your turn. Who are you? What do you
Great.
do around this joint?
I guess I've been around tech for probably over 20 years. And I say that because I actually grew up, and I think my introduction to tech was like the Oregon Trail or something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember
And,
that.
he died of dysentery. But,
Right.
I think that, I went to college and I took an MIS course and I almost failed. And then after college, I was a history and business double major. I flew out here to California and did some work. I ended up in venture capital. And in venture capital, I was working heavily on the business and the finance side and had no idea about the tech, right? Just no idea. And it was time for me to learn about tech. So I got hired at a company called BEA Systems. They built this app server, this WebLogic app server back in the day. And I was working there. I was running the developer programs group, and I said something really incorrect in front of about 300 software developers.
Oh, God.
And the
Yikes.
chief architect of the company was there, and he pulled me off stage and took me to his office and put me in a beanbag chair and explained how app servers worked, and then gave me a book on Java with a CD-ROM in the back and said, "Don't come back to work until you've built me your first Hello World app." And
Wow.
so,
Wow.
yeah. And so that I learned how, I am not a coder by any means. I will not call myself a programmer. But I actually picked up Java, PHP, then ASP.NET along my journey at BEA, IBM, Microsoft. Then I went to Juniper, and then at Cisco, I worked in the CTO office and started an open source organization and did a lot of fun stuff there. And then, after that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I kind of looked at my career and realized how much more help women need in the tech environment, in the corporate environment, especially as, we move up the corporate ladder, it gets harder and harder, and the spots are fewer and further between. So how do we get more sponsors, more mentors, more folks in those rooms? And how do we teach women to go fight for that raise and that promotion in a way where they're going to get it? So I'm a coach, and that's what I do. I, help women, whether they get their raise and promotion at their existing job, or I help them find a new job. We make sure that happens. So
That's amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have two daughters. I have two teenage daughters. And, so my investiture in this also is to look at, at the end of the day, I want to be able to turn to them and say, there are good role models for you that can go through this. There is a lot of shitty people in this industry, technology specifically, but there's just a lot of, there's not a lot of good. And Kyla, I want to echo something you said. How do you help people within this space, right? Becomes, it's a huge transformative kind of worldview. And I want my girls, ultimately, when they listen to this, whether they listen to it now, which I'm not going to force them to do that, but when they listen to it down the road, they can at least hold, good examples of, awesome human beings, awesome women who have gone through some of this process that, unfortunately have the scars from the shit that's been done, but also have, kind of light at the end of the tunnel, that there's a story to tell, that, call it a forcing function for now, but it's a forcing function to bring us to normative behavior, which is everybody has equal opportunity, equal footing, equal stance when it comes to these jobs and availability. So yeah, awesome. I love that. Love the aspect and dynamics there. So circling a little bit around, you both have talked about community kind of out there, but I want to ask the question, since I asked this of everybody, what community means to you. And Kyla, I'll start with you again. You're unfortunately on the bottom of my screen, so keep on, if my eyes look like they're wandering, it's because I'm sandwiched in between you two incredible people. So Kyla, we'll start with you. What does community actually mean to you?
Yeah, community is like a huge part of just my overall survival. But for me, community is not just, having a bunch of people who know each other. It's about having people who are willing to pour into each other and to also be poured into. It's this sort of symbiotic kind of relationship where everyone there, has this element of we need each other and has this shared understanding. It might not be like articulated in a manual or something, but everyone has the shared understanding that we are all here for each other. So, yeah.
I love that. I like the concept of pouring into each other. If I've been told multiple times over, by my tribe, so to speak, that I can't pour out of an empty cup. So there has to be somebody that's filling you, whether, however you choose to look at that analogy. So Lauren, over to you. What does community mean to you?
I would say that I would echo everything that was just said, first of all, because I really think that it comes down to the relationships and the shared understandings, but also trust, because you can't build a community without trust. And honesty goes along with that as well. So I think it's extremely important in our communities as we are going through this, time. I won't call it unprecedented because the news does too much. And but it's important for us, I think, to really step up our game and try to be positive role models for folks that are having a tough time and are, really going through it. And, I know people that are losing their business, losing their jobs, like trying to figure out where they want to live. There's an exodus occurring out of California right now, while we're burning down. Wow. I think that there's just a lot of opportunity for goodness, though. And I think the more that we can put it out, the more we're going to get it back. And that's part of community as well.
So pouring into each other, pouring into everyone around us, and also that trust basis. You kind of got to, I know we pre-briefed a little bit on trust, but I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, trust is intrinsic to everything that we do. We all work in tech or have some kind of approach to tech, and, trust gets bandied about a lot. Especially around data. Hey, how do I know that this data is trustworthy? And I think given this year, given the forcing function of geopolitical bullshit that's really happened, from Corona to politics to everything in between, I think trust forms that interesting basis to develop community around. How do I know that this information is real? We've seen this with the discussions around COVID. We've, some of the stuff I worked on with my day job, we look at communities that are inherently distrustful of government actions. And we're trying to use technology to bolster the argument that you should actually trust what the CDC is saying, because
Right.
otherwise bad things are going to happen to good people.
Mhm.
So when we look at the dynamics of trust, and Kyle, I'll throw it over to you again. When you started to go into your research, and I did a little bit of background snooping on LinkedIn, you're welcome. I try to be a little bit somewhat prepared for this, or even the stuff that you brought up this morning. How did it feel for you to kind of go into the environment of UMich and basically, be somebody that people had to develop trust and rapport with and build that community and still be an exemplar
Yeah.
of somebody that's succeeded in that space?
No, that's exactly what happened on the first day. Like I walk in in my incoming class, obviously in the department, there may be a couple other people who look like me, but they were also male. So, I still didn't have like a Black woman as an example to be like, yes, she did it, so I can do it too. But yeah, you explained exactly what happened. I'll never forget my databases class, advanced databases. We had to pick two partners for a project, and like literally everyone turned to people who looked like them to be partners. And I'm just like, wow, nobody here. Okay, great, great. So, it's really hard to develop community there. And there's another crazy story where I was in a hardware class and two women in the class, myself and another white woman. And she, we got a test. Everybody did really bad on it. And, the next day, everyone comes in like asking the TA, like, oh, that was so hard. Nobody passed it. You should give us a curve. And so then the TA says, oh, actually, someone got an A on the test. And they were like, oh, how? And then the TA in her infinite wisdom says, I won't tell you who she is. So automatically they're looking at the two of us. And then they immediately turn to the white girl and say, oh my gosh, how did you do it? Blah, blah, blah. It was me. But no one, everyone's
Damn straight it was.
right. But everyone's immediate response was
Yeah.
to think that. So right then and there, like that definitely made my trust just completely go down. Like, oh my gosh, what is happening? But one counteraction to that is that I built the community that I wanted. If I didn't see the community already there, I said, okay, who is doing the things I want to do? So for me, I was all about academics and moving forward. So people who came to office hours, who asked lots of questions in class, I'm hitting them on the side like, hey, do you want to study together? Hey, do you want to do this? So I'm all about building the community if you don't already see it there. And I'm also outgoing, so that helps with it as well. But
Small part.
yeah, but that's my selection process. Like you have to build the community if you don't see it there.
Well, that's been said about intentional community. I think,
Yeah.
some people throw around that word. I was asked the other day, but, I'm not naturally inclined to go find other people. I mean, and part of this is this year has done it. We now have a silicon wall where there used to be, the four walls of my apartment. It's now, there's an awesome song by a guy named Robert Grace. He's out of Ireland, funny enough, called Fake Fine. And so it's all about that kind of veneer that you wear, that kind of mask that you wear, and how you interact with people. Again, it's not necessarily directed at tech. It definitely isn't. So I think there's references to smoking crack in there, but
minor details.
Minor. It's piggy. It's a great song to identify some of the concepts and some of the things that have happened this year. Where all of a sudden, where we're used to being social creatures, whether you're introverted or extroverted, again, I think that often gets misconstrued as being, I'm an introvert. According to Myers-Briggs, you wouldn't guess that from the way I interact with folks, but I like my alone time, but I do draw energy from folks like yourselves, and I'm able to kind of converse on that side. So that concept of being intentional and really trying to find people that kind of color in the picture a little bit more, help color in your lives and how you view the world and how you bring that to bear. And so Lauren, in your perspective along those same lines, how have you seen the work that you've done through Spark Labs and kind of, I'm name dropping your company here. Hi, there you go.
Oh, thank you.
Again, it's right here on my corner of my screen. Again, research. I'll try to do this. I'll try to do this well. How have you seen that kind of concept of intentional community and what you're trying to accomplish with empowering women, empowering that conversation that they get to have, how you level out these companies? I'm really curious about that.
Well, one of the things that I created, and I fund, is a community for women in corporate roles. And in that community, it's an online virtual community. It's called Progress, and it is free to join. That no strings attached. You can join, you can leave, whatever. Um, but there are about 350 women in the community now. It's been around for about a year. I don't do much marketing or promotion of it. I just have it on my website. And people have really, it's a lot of word of mouth in terms of how it's grown. And I'm the one that lets people in, or, kind of closes the gate. And I have a rule that you have to, women have to be supporting women. You have to be a woman or identify as a woman. And there's a code of conduct, and frankly, there's no assholes.
That's kind
And
of important.
if you do it like that, right, you get a great community of folks. And we meet monthly. Actually, we have a Zoom that where everyone kind of jumps on, and we go around, and we we probably there's anywhere between like 5 and 50 I've had on those
Wow.
calls. And it's like you go around and you talk about what's going on in your life, and or career. And what happens is there is always like one or two things that pop up, and the other women are there to really help uplift these women that are going through something that is tough. And it's amazing to see. And it's really what I'm trying to do is bring together these women that are all trying to attain very similar things, and have them be able to lean on each other, and have them be able to start creating their networks at a more junior, as they're more junior, because as you get more senior, you need that network so desperately. And if it's women, more power to you.
That's awesome. Again, I've directed somebody, a couple of people, I think at this point, directed people towards that community. And I think
I
that's awesome.
appreciate that.
No,
Thank you.
I think it's always, again, going to the forcing function concept, there's always this forcing function that corporations try to do. They see something out in society, and all of a sudden they got to create something, like, oh, critical mass. We got to, I won't cast too many aspersions at it, because I do think it's valuable. There is that natural tendency that you need to start collecting momentum. You need to start using these things as a springboard to making things normative, right? Social agitation. It may not express itself in the best way, but it becomes agitation for change. It becomes something that causes greatness. It's something that causes, hopefully, positive disruption. But a lot of what you see through corporations that, okay, we'll set up an employee resource group. 5 Karen, I'm going to use the pejorative, 5 Karens will join that group. And then you never stop hearing about, everybody else's business. And it becomes something that's, even though it's kind of this intentional community, it becomes this intentional thing. And we see this, men do this too, and we do this a lot, trust me. And it's even more unsavory than I care to talk about at this point. But it becomes this kind of thing that snowballs, and it kind of makes everybody look a little bit more askance at that. I mean, we've all experienced probably little microcosms of this within the companies and institutions that we've been a part of. So how do you fight against the natural tendency to kind of virtue signal, if you will, within corporations or within large educational institutions, and really try to get to the meat of, what community is about, how to build communities even? And I'm actually going to point at both of you, so you can answer in your own different ways. Won't pick anybody this time.
No, I think like one huge thing is authenticity. If you come and you present yourself as a person that is very authentic, we all make mistakes. No one's going to know all the right words, all the terms to use every time, but you bring that as your full self and show yourself as a person who's not perfect, but willing to learn and see this as a process we all go through together. I think that's the most important. And then also vulnerability, which kind of goes into the authenticity. You have to be vulnerable in order to be authentic, because no one wants to have community with a bunch of shells, a bunch of fake people. Once you have those connections with people who are at their core acting as the person that they are, I think that's how you get around it completely.
Excellent. And I would definitely agree. And I think that also, for me, it's a lot of admitting I don't know. Right. And I'm okay with that. Right. Because I want to learn. If I don't know something, I want to learn more about it. And I want to learn the right way to do this. And so it's a lot of listening, and a lot of sitting in uncomfort uncomfortable situations at times that, and as a coach, I often put people in those situations because they have to get used to them, quite frankly, as we all do. And I think they will become more comfortable, if people are authentic and, honest in themselves. But, like Kyla says, if you get a bunch of shells, no one wants that. And if you also get corporations that are building programs without the input of employees and are relying on specific employees to build those programs that they aren't compensating fairly, then you don't have a solution. You have the solution for failure, but beyond that, you really have nothing. And I watch these companies pour money into employee resource groups, and some are phenomenal, right? I talk to some companies that just really have it down pat, and they know what they're doing, and they're great. And then I see some companies just paying out of their wallet to get on lists and, be the coolest company and things along those lines. And for me, it's just like, it's a sham. So I look at them and, everyone knows that they pay you, like, says it on the page, right? Like, you paid to have that number one slot.
This
right?
So,
Right.
I don't think the employees are voting for you. I think your pocketbook is.
it's up there with those most ethical company type rank scales, and you're like,
I know.
know exactly.
And I do think that people are genuinely trying to do their best, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's not doing, it's listening.
Yeah, I want to add to your point too. I really like the fact that you brought up that there's these employee resource groups where they want to lean on the person or the group of people who are being marginalized to make the change. But if the power to bring about change was in the hands of the marginalized, don't you think it would already be changed at this point? So it's just stupid to me. So that's one. And then two, not only are, people who take up these things because they're so passionate about it, not only are they not compensated, sometimes they're docked for it and saying, oh, you're not enough into your job. So it's like, all right, you say in the media that you really value employee diversity. However, on a person's evaluation, it says you're doing too much diversity work. So which one is it? Pick what you want.
Yeah. You can't serve two masters almost, there's this expectation. I think I would hope that, specifically the company that I work at, they during the day, they do place a high emphasis on going out and doing volunteer work and trying to get involved in it. And I will, for all intents and purposes, they do a really good job of trying to reinforce the idea of, ERGs or employee research groups as communities, as intentional communities. You're not forced to be a part of these, which I think is great, because it's not, if you're not a part of them, you're not really doing your part kind of thing. People need to feel, or they need to have that volition. They need to have that desire within them to be a part of these. It doesn't mean that they're any less if they don't.
Right.
It just means that, they actually, I think they're more willing to participate and they're more willing to, kind of agitate for change if they're voluntarily choosing to be there. So I think I love the dynamics that you both have talked about. Kyla, going back into education, higher ed, we see a lot of this kind of institutional marginalization as well. And it's around the world. I don't go to a domestic program. I'm actually super stoked, and I'm going to touch on some of the stuff that you're working on. The program I'm part of, it's all about inclusive design. It's all designed. We have engineers, we have artists, we have dancers, which is phenomenal. We actually have sonic engineers, which I heard from this morning, that are taking, written history and turning it into audio, I forget the
there's a great word. There's audifications. There's lots of words.
Sonification, even better.
Yes.
So I was like laughing, like I'm in academia now. I gotta use big words.
Oh yeah.
And I love it, and the passion that these people have, and for doing things. But there's also this kind of weird look that people give when you tell them that you're part of inclusive design, that you're looking at things from a different lens. So how, given that you work with, auditory experiences, really, and it's really kind of an inclusive design by nature, how do you think people view what you do? Do they kind of look at you with like 3 eyes and 10 heads type thing? Or are you finding that this is something that the world is adopting and shifting and changing towards more acceptance of?
So qualify the word people. So people I work with, or just the general public, or both?
Which one do you want to answer first?
I'll start with department. I'll go small and go big. So with my
Sounds great.
department, we have a human-centered computing group here, and we all have some area of technology we work in and apply it to people. So to the other traditional computer scientists in the department, they think that we all do the exact same thing. And they also think that our work is a lot easier but all of us are trained computer scientists, but we also have a mastery of another discipline. So for me, it's signal processing because I do with sounds. It's also experimental psychology because our experiments that we perform, you have to know how people work, how people perceive things. So we have this really strong perceptual background. So I would say that the misnomer, or the just the error in thought, is that what we do is easy because we deal with people. It makes it easier to do the technical stuff because at the end of the day a person's going to use it, but it's not easier because I need to know three different disciplines and make sure they all merge together in a way that actually makes sense for all three disciplines. So but then for broader society, I'm definitely seeing a lot bigger of an acceptance of human-centered computing, of immersive design, universal design. And like even research shows that when you create a universal design, that not only people who are differently abled or need accessibility use it, but everybody uses it. For example, Siri and like a lot of the speech to text options on your phone, those were meant for people with disabilities, but everybody uses it. So there's lots of examples of that. So I think the general public is more willing to see the value in it because technology is something that we touch every single day, and lots of us are familiar with being frustrated by technology. So if you say, hey, I'm working towards making sure that you are not frustrated by this anymore, and it operates in the way that you operate in order to get whatever task it is that you need to get done, people are like, sign me up, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. Like, I've been going through PhD seminar this week, and the University College Dublin program, Smart Lab specifically, they've signed some agreements to NYU, for example, and you're starting to see these inclusive design schools, like you're saying, human-centered design, start to show up a lot more, and it's very, very exciting to see the lights turn on people's face. Like, oh my gosh, this is something that exists.
Right. Who would have thought humans were using things we designed? I thought
not
it was
all about
robots.
machines.
All robots.
We're not in Skynet just yet.
Well, it's
Exactly.
also like, John
Or
Maeda,
are we?
right? Like John Maeda has brought so much into for STEM. Now it's STEAM,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah,
art
that's right.
into this element of technology. And I think, he's been, I think, was he at MIT or something like that? That was a very large forcing function for a while. And he was one of the only people that was doing it for a long time.
Wow.
And then, I think that, Kyle, what you're doing is phenomenal. Like, I want to come down
Yeah.
and be one of your test subjects
Hey,
because that
come
sounds
through.
so cool.
But the fact that
Um,
you just said it, you can't do it now. There's the IRB, the whole anonymity thing. No, I'm joking. We won't say which one you did or if you came at all. I'm just saying.
Way to go, Lauren.
I'm
You
joking. No,
just
I'm
threw it.
joking. I'm joking. You may or may not come down. You may or may not be in one of
I
N
cannot
experiments.
confirm nor deny this conversation
Right.
ever
do I
happened.
get like
That's
picked
that's
up
my
by
favorite
like
class.
a black car with like two people in black suits in the
May or may not.
Is,
Yes or no.
Depends,
yes or
depends
no?
on what you do in the next
It
5
depends on yes
minutes.
or no. Right.
Yeah, I think it's incredible to see how these things go. One of the members of the cohort that I'm in is part of MedVR, so looking specifically at kind of the interactions between. I think she's doing this specific on educating kids with autism or spectrum disorders,
Nice.
right? And so I always find it fascinating. I work for a technical company and I get to mess with some pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's all underneath the desk over here and things. I have a 3D printer somewhere down that corner. And that fascination is there. And like you said, some of these things become normative. I yell at
Mhm.
Siri every single evening.
Right.
Set my alarm for 5 o'clock. And I don't want to be up at 5 a.m. But I am.
Right.
I'm one of those people that now has to get up. And a lot of these things that we kind of, yeah, like you were saying, were created for a different purpose than what they've been adopted and turned into.
Mhm.
I think it's fascinating to see how the world is kind of shifting and changing, where we start to realize that new ways of experiencing technology, new modalities of expression, and how these get used. It's a new revolution, right?
Yeah.
Accessibility of design and stuff like that. So.
Well, I mean, think about, us wearing masks and not being able to
Mhm.
open our iPhones.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a
Oops.
quick patch. Thanks, Apple.
But
Yeah,
probably,
and I still want my fingerprint sensor. I still miss that. You know.
but probably as you already know, like the research shows, as you have more, as your work for especially women and minorities in any sort of technical field, the more it touches people, that's what really engages women and minorities. So like this whole move of having this universal design, I'm not just making the next fastest processor, but I'm making a processor that might go in a pacemaker that's going to save someone's life. So, you start to link the human. And I think that's what's going to draw in people from diverse backgrounds.
Yeah.
I
I-
would totally agree.
Yeah, I would love to know more about that particular research. Maybe I'll ping you after this one's done because that's kind of foundational to a lot of what we want to see. And yeah, oh, you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lauren too. Send us an email, why don't you?
Yeah,
We'll be
yeah,
part of that. Um,
Absolutely.
so as we kind of head towards the tail end of this, and you guys have been the best guests possible to launch season 2 of whatever this
Aw.
is that I am
Aw,
doing these
thank
days.
you.
Thank you.
What are a couple of the challenges that you would offer to market, that you would offer to women in technology or otherwise, women in education, higher ed, women of color, women in technology, like I said, to repeat myself over and over and over again? What are some of those challenges that you would say, hey, look for, don't be afraid of stepping up and do that? And I will let you two determine who's going to speak first on that one, since it's
I
a
keep
loaded
speaking
question.
first, so Lauren can go if you have an answer.
Oh, I've got
Readily.
lots of
Oh,
answers.
do
but
it.
Come on, coach.
All right. Yeah. No one ever calls me that. That's weird.
Yeah, well, that's all right. There's always got to be one. I'm the guy
Let
that's
me
in the
in,
corner
coach.
doing that.
I know, right? Elsie's just fine. So I think that when I encourage all women to really in tech to build out their networks and build out diverse networks, because you do not know who you're going to be working for, with, etc. in 10 years. So whatever you do, be kind, don't be a jerk,
That part.
get your job done well, and make sure that you're doing that networking on LinkedIn, even though it's an interesting site. But just do as much as you can. And and when you're expanding those networks, don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them to join, and send them a little note about why, right? Because you have nothing to lose. What are they going to say? No. That's great. You're going to have no a billion times said to you in your life. So just take that risk, right? And I think also, I think it's so important for women to just, really start speaking out about things that are occurring in workplaces or in academia that have not been exposed yet. And I know I struggle with this because, I have a lot of friends that are in tech, and I have a lot of experiences that were amazingly positive and some that were negative, right? And I don't want to take away the positive, but I should probably share a little bit more about my experiences so that folks know they're not alone. And I think that's important as well.
Authenticity and honesty, like that Kyla had mentioned before. It's, again, you mentioned too. It's so huge and important in this. So Kyla, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh no, yeah, no, I want to say yes, 100% to all of that. And I would add, just not being afraid to brag on yourself. Like, if you don't have a website where people can just Google you and know everything you do, you're not working hard enough. So for me, it was so hard to make my own website, because I'm like, ugh, who does this girl think she is? She's just doing so much. Yeah, I am doing a lot though. So, but yeah, don't be afraid to brag on yourself. Don't be afraid to have the confidence to say all the things that you do, because women and minorities tend to downplay the things that we do, because, through some part of our experience, we've been taught humility sometimes. So it's like, oh, I don't want to seem to be that person. Meanwhile, the person with all the accolades and the bells and the horns and the whistles is getting all of your work when you're equally qualified and you have not sold yourself that way. So I definitely say that. Definitely what Lauren said, looking out for mentorship and for people who don't look like you, because you'd be surprised who would be in your corner if you just opened up your network, opened up your options, opened your eyes to just everybody. So that was it. And I had a third one. It may not come back to me, but yeah, I'll stick with those two.
If the third one comes back, I'm going to talk for a bit. So you
Yeah. Oh,
tell
I know
me,
what it
just
was.
like, okay, there.
I know what it was. So it was about learning, taking this time to not see, oh, I don't know that area as a challenge. Don't see that as, oh, I just don't know that area. You can take an e-course like Coursera, Lynda, all those things. They are out there. Watch a YouTube video, strengthen the things that you think are challenges, because you don't have to be the expert, but if you're knowledgeable in that space, you can just add that. And fortunately, due to COVID, we're at home a lot more. For me, I travel a lot. So all of that in the airport waiting time has completely been eliminated. So I find myself with like a teeny bit more time to do some of the things that I really wanted to do, learn some of the things I wanted to learn. So not being afraid to have, they call it a growth mindset, to, don't feel like, oh, I don't know that and I never will, just pick up a book. You might not know the whole thing immediately, but, just be not afraid to learn.
I want to shout out one of my coworkers real quick because she stepped up. She had never been in tech. She came from a PR firm, joined my company, and took on AI as a thematic matter. And kudos to her. She stepped up. She goes, Dave, I don't know any of this stuff. Like, I've never dealt with this before. And like you're saying, Kyla, jumping on Coursera, she took a couple of free MIT courses. I'm pretty sure she did. She certainly is whip smart. So I'm going down that path. And she did that. She did exactly what you said. And the ability for her to become, she's never right now, never going to say never. Right now, she's not what you would say is an expert on AI. But you know what she can do? She can hold a conversation with the best of them right now.
Exactly.
Because she went and dedicated herself to that process, to that learning, right? She took something and she kind of embraced it, went after it, and she did it on her own. And she did it with very minimal coaching, if at all, from someone like me, who, and I always want to find those type of people, and getting her. And I want to echo, Lauren, some of your points as well. One of the best things that happened with her is she was put in touch with one of the people I hold in high esteem within my company as well, who's been through Sun, who's been through Oracle, who's put the time in as well, probably has the books to write about what's gone on there, and aligning herself up with her in a mentorship, and being able to, have those meetings and being able to hear, it gets pretty bad, but there is a lot of goodness that can happen through that.
Yeah. And I want to share a story if we have a second.
Absolutely.
And that is, I did this career strategy seminar for Cisco's ERG, and Cisco was great and opened it up and invited, anyone who wanted to attend. And I got a couple, they opened it up for questions at the end, and I got a couple emails after that were very specific to, I feel like I'm getting discriminated against in my role because I'm a woman, because I'm Black, because I'm too old. Right. So I got those three things. And you know what I did? I called each of those women directly. And so some of them were very surprised, but I called them and I offered any help that they needed to get to the next level in their career, because fundamentally that's what we all need to do as a society, is really just extend our arms and like pull people up. And I think it's important for everyone to really look around and look in areas where you normally wouldn't look, to start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put the challenge out to the men that listen to this as well. You got to step up too. You got to stop being assholes, because you are, and you have to be the people that are willing to countenance this type of conversation, to enter into it willingly and be open and available to folks that have, regardless of gender, race, creed, religion, whatever they look like. You have to be the people, and you step in the gap, in a male dominated field, for better, for worse. That's your opportunity to actually make things better, to be the forcing function that normalizes opportunity for everyone. So that's the challenge that I have. It's a challenge that men should take on their shoulders as well.
Yeah.
And we work at it from both angles, right? I think that's the most important part here. If we're all pulling in the same direction together, we're all going to get there, and we're going to get there. I promise we'll get there. Maybe not in my lifetime, but we're going to get there. And I'm not that old, so we got a while.
May I add something to your statement?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were right in the middle of a thought. I'm so sorry. But, people think of, oh my gosh, being an ally, that's such a huge thing. I want to give like a low bar, just this is something you can do today when Corona ends and all that. But, just something as simple as inviting out that colleague who you think wouldn't feel welcome when everyone's going to the bar. I don't drink beer, but I'll find a cider beer. I've learned to love cider beer, but these sort of informal areas where people form these camaraderies opportunities and these networks are made. Invite that person who you told yourself in your head, oh, they won't come because they have kids or no one looks like them, or invite them. You have no idea if they'll say yes or no. They may have been waiting for someone to say, to invite them to something. So that's a low-hanging fruit option.
Never miss those opportunities. I can't tell you how many times after those virtual happy hours, the real conversations happen. Where you're, again, it's taking the mask off, setting it aside and saying, hey, you know what? This is the real shit that's happening. Corona affects us all. It's affected all of our work habits, whether we traveled a lot or whether we did. I mean, people are blocked from even their local society or local community here. I'm constantly challenged.
I want to set a high bar. I want to set a high bar now.
I got low and I got high. All right, bring it up.
So I want every single male that listens to this podcast to be vocal for a woman of color that they normally wouldn't be vocal for in a positive way when that woman is not in the room.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, women lose battles for promotions when they're not in the room.
Yeah.
And their bosses aren't fighting for them. So fundamentally, we need more people in those rooms fighting for these women. And if folks can step up here, that would be phenomenal. That's the high bar.
I love it.
Wow. It's kind of ironic that I'm in the middle of you two. And Kyla, you're actually at the bottom of my screen. Lauren's at the top. So I actually have that visually represented. It won't look this way in video, I promise. It moves everything around. So I wanted to thank you both. I know there's a little project you guys worked on this year called Chasing Grace, if I wrote that down right. So give me the 30-second plug of what the Chasing Grace episode is about, and we'll see if it happens.
We both pointed at each other. So Chasing Grace is a documentary by Jennifer Clower, and it's about just bringing awareness to women who are in technology. And there's lots of different themes. There was one on boss ladies, and Lauren and I happen to be on the one for diversity. And we have some really real conversations. I say real twice.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. There's going to be some sort of screening in the future.
Coming up in the future.
Yes. Do you want to add anything more?
No, I think we were in this amazing documentary, and it was around diversity of thought, right? And there was another woman, staff that was with us, and she is phenomenal as well. She's from MongoDB, and she's leads up communications there. And we all bring something different to the table, and I think you'll be surprised by each of our stories.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm excited about it. And you just told me about it in like 45 minutes ago. So, I mean, this is great. And this just confirms that I want to see it as much as well. So thank you both, Lauren, Kyla, for a random encounter on the internet. I say that and it sounds super creepy, but it's not, guys. I promise. But thank you so much for taking the chance and taking the time.
Thank you.
I love the stories. I look forward to seeing the incredible things that you do. And I will continue to send folks both your directions because Kyla, I'm involved in academia now. Yay! And Lauren, I work with some incredible women that could benefit from the communities that you're establishing, coaching, mentoring, everything along that line. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Look forward to continued conversations in the future. Thanks.
Absolutely.